seen this before? All right. Good evening, folks.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so very much for coming out.
I want to take a brief.
Yeah.
I want to take a brief minute just to recognize one of my musical mentors over the years here in York. His name was Twirling Rit, the Record King Ritter. Any of you ever heard of him? Rit worked at Sawcuster Music Shop up on George Street, and he was personally responsible for expanding the musical tastes of several generations of Yorkers here in this community. We would go through his shop and buy an album, and we would buy rhythm and blues and Temptation and James Brown and different things. And Rick would inevitably come through and say, "Kurt," he said, "come here, I got something for you to listen to." He'd go over there and pull something out of his stack saying, a song called "Search for the New Land," jazz cut by Lee Morgan. My goodness, it blew my mind. I was never the same after that. I have probably 1,000 jazz albums now myself. You know, that I got into jazz. It just helps you with your reading and all. I'm an avid reader, and when I start listening to that jazz, just the reading just goes, it just flows like you're right there and all like that. So I'm forever grateful to Rit, the Record King. He was also one of the few black men that had a radio station here in York. Him and a guy named Bill Walker, WSPA, Gospel Hour. So I'm grateful for those musicians that came up through York. You know, I've heard somewhere before that music is a universal language, and I know during those times when music was playing, it was good times. Music sort of chronicled. During the era, the music was parodying and chronicling the sign of the times. You had Marvin Gaye talking about the Vietnam War. This is back in the 60s and all like that. And James Brown, "Say It Loud," Black and Proud. Lee Morgan, "Search for the New Land." John Coltrane talking about Alabama. These guys were singing songs that were relevant to what were happening to them in their day. And you'll see in their stories, it's amazing that what many of those musicians went through in their lives. If you want to look at some of their further work after this, I have 3 that are my all-time favorites. One of them is Sammy Davis Jr. He wrote an autobiography called "Yes, I Can." Incredible autobiography. He was in the military. I think they broke his nose 3 times in the military, beat him up, painted him white a couple times. Then there was Miles Davis. He got beat up several times by the police and all like that. You know, these guys went through a lot coming up, trying to become masters of their trade during these difficult times in our country. But you know what? Their perseverance saw them through to where they became great, even to today. Many of those artists, they were supporters of the movement of Martin Luther King, and they contributed thousands of dollars to keep the participants out of jail and keep the movement moving forward. A community and a society, they grow by propagating their history and their culture, which in turn serves to carry on its values and its traditions for future generations to build upon. That was always a pet peeve of mine because we work at the old cemetery out here now, the Lebanon Cemetery. It was a segregated cemetery. But many of the students don't know who's living there, their family members and all, and their family members really accomplish things. And we're able, as a community, to build on each other's shoulders and accomplish what others couldn't accomplish. But if they have no idea of what these things are, it's almost like starting each generation over. So we're mounting an effort around town to make sure that our students and other people know who existed before us, the ancestors before us, and what they did before we were there. There's a word called Sankofa. It's an ancient Ghanaian word, which loosely means it is not taboo to go back and get what it is at being risked and left behind. Sankofa. A lot of times, because it was about going back. My grandfather taught me so many lessons. My grandfather was 100 years old. I have a picture in here of me and him together at 100 years old. And he taught me so much. I didn't live with my father. It was a blessing to be able to live with an elderly man like that. So I learned a lot about patience and about taking care of people and reacting to people and all like that. So never be afraid to go back and look at what changed it for you and who helped, whose shoulders you are standing on. There's a tree over on that park over on Curates Street. Ophelia wrote something about Ophelia wrote an article, I think, in the newspaper about what they call a witness tree. And this was a tree that had been standing for years. And there's a tree like that over on Curates Street. It's been there as long as I was there. It's been there as long as my granddad was there. My granddad came here in York in 1921. But I took a nice photo of that and I called that the witness tree, because just to think of the things that that tree must have seen over those 100 years that it's over. It's a beautiful tree if you ever get a chance to go over and see that. It's right in the middle of Martin Luther King's Park. I'm thankful to the efforts of the Community Foundation, the Appell Center, and of course, the soon-to-be Christmas Addicts Association History and Culture Center. Yes. They're coming online, and I want to thank them for their continued support of the efforts to correct their shortcomings, because I believe that as our young people are able to understand the sacrifice put forth by their predecessors and the jobs that they did before them, that they would have more of an aptitude to want to achieve at a higher level themselves rather than succumb to the weaknesses of the world. A man called Adam was initially a Nat King Cole project. Everybody heard of Nat King Cole? Yes. Nat King Cole, he was a suave, debonair black man. Sang, his voice was so silky, he had the ladies swooning. And Nat King Cole, before the film was made, he passed. And he passed the rights to the film to a guy named Ike Jones, who had produced several other videos bought to him. Jones bought the film to producer Louis Dumont as the first of a proposed series of films. With this film, co-producer Jones became the first African American to produce a major American motion picture. The film was based on a composite of jazz musicians, including Miles Davis. It's very strange. They have a saying about art imitating life or life imitating art, because you see several things that happened in this movie. It happened to Sammy Davis, least of which was he ended up marrying Cicely Tyson. And he ended up marrying her in the movie. And it was troubled times. He did marry Cicely Tyson in the movie, and he also married to Cicely in real life. Neither of them worked out. The movie tells the story of a self-destructive jazz musician played by Davis and his tumultuous relationship with the people in his life. A guilt-ridden musician, Adam blames himself for a car accident which killed his family and children. The film stars Sammy Davis Jr., a multi-talented gentleman. Sammy learned to tap dance at the age of 5 years old at the feet of one of the greatest tap dancers of all time, a guy named Bill Bojangles Robinson, 5 years old. I have a couple of video clips of him dancing. It's fantastic. Then we have Louis Armstrong, a guy he called Saxmo. One of his friends ended up calling him Saxmo because when Louis sang, he sang loud mouth. And he said, "Man, make your mouth look like a satchel." And he started calling him Saxmo. Like Louis. Louis eventually became so good, he became an ambassador, a U.S. ambassador of music to the world. He traveled the world over. You have Ossie Davis of Ruby Dee fame, his wife Ruby Dee. Ossie won a couple awards, he was a great actor. Then you have Cicely Tyson, award-winning Cicely Tyson. You have the voluptuous Lola Falana, even her name is voluptuous. we used to watch her movies just to see her, Lola Falana. Frank Sinatra Jr., you know, Sammy Davis was hooked up with Frank Sinatra's dad. You know what, they had a group they called the Rat Pack. They had the Rat Pack, so they were all joined together, and it was sort of got together along with each other, because during those times there was a lot of racial incidences going on. They couldn't play in certain areas and all. You'll see one part in this video where they couldn't play. Some places they could go in and play, but they couldn't use the facilities, eat and all that. So you'll see Frank Sinatra Jr. and Sammy Davis take their own solo and play up into the audience, just irritate the folks that are in there. One of the most exciting collaborations of African American talent since Porgy and Bess. Has everybody ever seen Porgy and Bess? Yeah. Porgy and Bess. I hope you get that film out. I don't know why. Some films over the years, they just kept them in the plot and just never played them a lot. But they had fantastic people in those films. Sammy played in that also. Dorothy Dandridge. Sammy played a sporting life guy called Sporting Life. And he sang a fantastic song and sang to it and danced to it called It Ain't Necessarily So. If you get a chance to see that clip itself, it's worth it itself. So again, I just say if you're interested in seeing any more of these guys or learning more about them, their lives, it's fantastic lives. Sammy's autobiography is probably that thick, easily over 1,000 pages. It's called Yes I Can. Beautiful autobiography. Satchmo, he is about the same thickness. He's, like I said, a musical ambassador to the world. I used to didn't like Satchmo. Satchmo sort of, some of his characterism sort of seemed like he was just playing a fool. Like, but then after reading his book and seeing what he was really doing, I really learned to appreciate how he was able to move his career forward. He was a great man. And then you had Miles Davis done by Quincy Truth, another award-winning writer. Miles Davis was one of the greatest of all times. If you ever heard a cut that he played called All Blues. For All Blues, he got a group of musicians, John Coltrane and guys like that together in a recording studio, and in one take, boom, he played that song, and that song has been designated as one of the greatest songs of all time, just in one take. Without messing up and all like that. So you're in for, if you like music, particularly if you like jazz, you're in for a real treat, and you'll see the social system and this kind of structure that these jazz musicians had to go to. Louis Armstrong had to run around the country trying to get away from the mafia because he didn't want to do their bidding. They wanted him to play in a cheap place where he didn't think it was worth his while, so they chased him all over the country until he got his own benefactor, was able to settle those things down. But these guys went through a lot to lay down this legacy of music and history for us. And I'm hoping that you could appreciate it and talk about it as we move forward and all like that. There's so much culture and history for us to lean on and to learn about. One of my pet peeves is that in our society today, if we are able to learn and appreciate and love each other's culture, we'll be a lot better society for that. I know some of you heard me talk about the meeting of the rivers, these two rivers in Latin America. One called the Rio Negro, the other called the Rio Sonora. The Rio Negro was a jet black river. It was jet black because it was crystal clear and you could see the soot at the bottom of the river. The Rio Sonora was a brown, muddy river, which was washing the mud down to South America. And where they met, they didn't mix. They stayed apart. It was just like staying apart for 23 miles. And after 23 miles, they mixed together and they end up becoming the headwaters of the mighty Amazon River. And I liken that a lot of times to what happens here in York. You know, white folks here in York, black folks here in York, we work together and live together for a lot of years. And oftentimes don't mix, or did not mix our cultures or our friendships or whatever. But if we ever get to the point where that happens, and we appreciate and love each other like we can, we could become that mighty Amazon River, like York, could become a mighty system here in this country. So thank you. So you guys ready for the movie?
Yeah.
See this movie called, one of my favorites called A Man Called Adam. Thank you.